Hey guys, welcome to the first episode, the baby episode of the BLOC cast. It's going to be the podcast starring me, Angel from the Block, where I talk about whatever I want to talk about. And first, I would like to start with talking about myself because it's my podcast and maybe you don't know who I am. If you don't, how did you get here? I would love to know. But my name is Angel. I'm 23, born and raised in Austin, Texas, and I'm starting this podcast because I've been content creating for like a little over a year now, and I'm tired of only having 10 minutes or less to say what I want to say. I have a lot on my chest, and now it's time to get it off. And as far as my username, because people actually ask me this quite a bit, Angel from the Block literally started as like a meaningless username that I chose because I am from the block, the hood, the ghetto. And I think it's really funny when Jennifer Lopez tries to describe her upbringing and call herself Jenny from the Block. So I was like, how silly would it be if I was Angel from the Block? But the more like content I created, the more I started focusing my content towards being something pretty political. And so now it's kind of funny that I named myself Angel from the Block because if you know anything about World War I, World War II, blocks were big, and block without the K, like I spell it, literally means like an alliance of people with a shared political goal. And that is like all the content I make. My activism is incredibly intersectional, okay? Because I am disabled, I'm also Black, I'm also Latino, I'm also Indigenous, I'm also born a woman, but like trans. So there's lots of like intersectionality with what I'm passionate about. It's giving big block. So that's what the pod's gonna be. A lot of intersectional issues that I wanna talk about, as well as intersectional nonsense that I would like to talk about as well. So, anyways, now that that's taken care of, I would like to have my first rant be about childlike whimsy and joy. In 2026, we need to make it the year of bringing back childlike whimsy. Already parched. Have my emotional support water bottle with me. But I feel like as a culture, our greatest downfall is how we do not fuck with children. Okay, this whole thought process for me started because I saw this meme where it was like those pictures of people's like different mindsets, and like it's just like a basic brain and slowly turns into a brain that is like exploding into like a vast cosmos. And obviously the brain exploding into the vast cosmos is like the wokest, smartest brain. And it went from like the smallest brain being someone saying that they hate kids, they can't stand kids, and slowly, progressively understanding that children are the ultimate comrades because they are globally an oppressed class. And this just spoke to me because I went to UT, right? Hook them and also fuck them because they're trying to totally get rid of all of the programs that made me the great, well-educated person that I am today. I studied youth and community studies in the College of Ed. And I used to be a person that was like, I hate kids, I can't stand kids. I didn't hate kids. What I hated is that kids are hard to understand because they don't have all the language that they need. And because they don't have all the language that they need, you as an older person, as an adult, might have some difficulty figuring out what they need and what they want, which is what leads to tantrums that are very scary. So I used to think that I was scared of kids, and then I went to school to face my fears, and I learned about kids, learned about how their minds worked, and I realized sometimes like low key, high key, like the meme said, kids are the ultimate comrades. Kids are genuinely, I fully, wholeheartedly believe they are just as smart as us because there are different types of knowledge, right? There's like emotional intelligence, and then there's like intellectual intelligence, right? And then there is like social knowledge. And as adults, we have a lot of intellectual intelligence and, you know, skills that we've refined from like going to school. And then we also tend to have a lot of like social knowledge, hopefully, from like engaging with society for a long period of time as grown people. Kids, they kind of lack those like refined skills and that social knowledge. But what they don't lack is emotional intelligence, okay? It's still developing for them. But I, as someone that works with kids on a regular basis in a therapeutic environment, have seen kids be way more emotionally aware and emotionally intelligent than like a lot of people that are my age, a lot of other 23-year-olds or people older than me. And so the reason that this meme got me thinking like we need to get back to childlike whimsy and joy is because during my like degree program, I was learning about the stages of development for these kids. And something that I learned is that like Piaget, he was a dude, a philosopher, and he identified like all of these different stages of development for children. And he had, what is it called? I gotta Google it. Maybe they shouldn't have gave me my degree if I don't know these things. So in Piaget's stages of development, cognitive development that is, it is the second stage of development from the ages of 2 to 7 years old that is called like the pre-operational stage of development. After that is like ages 7 to 11, concrete operational stage. But like in this 2 to 7 year old pre-operational stage of development, Piaget discovered that like children they're starting to develop empathy before that, before they're 2 years old, they're incredibly selfish. From 2 to 7, they're also still incredibly selfish. And then when they get to that next stage is when they start being less selfish and caring more about like society and other people. But prior to that, developmentally, it makes complete sense for kids to just not give a damn about anybody else because all they're thinking about is survival. Like, if you were 6, why would you care about your community when like you're literally 6, you're like practically helpless. You need to care about yourself so that you can be safe and okay. It makes sense. But something that was noted by researchers is that as kids start to develop that awareness of like other people socially, they start to like almost overextend their awareness and their empathy. And children in this age range, 2 to 7, can be described and have been described by psychologists as being like, quote, like overly empathetic and extending their empathy towards like things that aren't even human because they're just barely learning what empathy is. And like the example I remember learning about at school is like a rock. Like a child in like this pre-operational stage, ages 2 to 7, might kick a rock and be like, oh my God, did I hurt the rock? Poor rock. Or like drop something and that's like an object, not a person, and being like, oh my gosh, did I hurt it? Because they don't yet fully understand that like that thing doesn't have feelings. But this is where like my woo-woo spirituality comes in that is like not as scientifically based, but I feel like we dropped the ball and we fell off when we stopped thinking that like we should care about those objects. Like that's something that's super innate to us in our childhood. And I do feel like it's socially programmed out of us as we age and we like conform to the society that we live in to like not give a damn about rocks or not give a damn about objects that we drop and break. But la cosa es, not giving a damn about like objects that you break and seeing objects as super disposable is precisely what leads to things like overconsumption and the climate crisis that we currently have because people just buy and don't care about the items that they have or don't see them as like inherently valuable just because they exist, not because they're living or non-living. Because that's what these psychologists tried to argue, right? Like that these kids are overly empathetic because they extend their empathy towards non-living things. But I feel like non-living things are still very much deserving of our empathy. And it is a lie of society that we need to not care about those non-living things. Because even now, like with the climate crisis that we have, scientists are sitting here trying to figure out how we can work to restore the planet because we spent all of this time thinking that like we don't need to give a shit about rocks. That mountain over there, blow it up. It has precious minerals in it that we can use to like build some bombs or something ridiculous like that. Like that mindset is what's actively killing our planet. The mindset of like your objects, the materials that you own and have don't matter and you shouldn't care or extend empathy towards them. That's what's led us to all of this overconsumption, this climate change that's like killing us, in fact, like killing the planet around us and us too. So I feel like perchance the children are the ultimate comrades, the people in the 2 to 7 pre-oppositional phase, because they understand like that they do need to care about everything around them and they haven't had it like deprogrammed from them yet. And so I really like thinking about it because like I think when we're grown, we think everything is so like hopeless because we're so far gone from being like 2 or 7. But it's really comforting to me to think that like that has always been within us though. Like when we came out and we just barely even knew about society, naturally, we already wanted to be caring and give a shit about a rock that we stepped on or a vase that we broke, right? So I think everybody, number one resolution, because if we're being honest, the new year really does start with spring. Like naturally, that's how it works. So you still have time to make your resolutions. And I think at the top of the list needs to be bringing back your childlike joy and whimsy. So let's talk about the things that I'm doing to bring back my childlike joy and whimsy. First of all, I started roller skating again. A blast. Why did we stop traveling on quads on little wheels under our feet? I don't know, but I recently started going to like adult skate nights at my local skating rink. The first time I went, I met a follower, and I was like, this is fame, oh my God. But it was so cool, like just to be at a roller skating rink in community with a bunch of people. And I don't know if this is like an Austin roller skating rink thing or if it's like universal, but like the roller skating rink I went to, it was full of pinche emos, like older people. I saw so many like older people roller skating and, you know, wearing their cute little like wrist guards to make sure that they don't like fracture something if they fall. And I just love old people being included in spaces. Like something that really bothers me when I go places is if I don't see any elderly people, because like you're gonna be old one day if you're not already. I'm gonna be old one day. I would like to still have fun. So if there's a place that is only limited to like 20 somethings or even 30 somethings, girl, I don't wanna be there. I'm trying to be somewhere everybody can have fun. Of course it's adult night, so the kids aren't allowed to be there, but that's just cause there's like liquor and music about booties bouncing, which is great to skate to, but not appropriate for children. So it was really nice and it was really cool. And I started like overly analyzing it and processing just how cool the skating environment is in and of itself, because it's one where like all of the rules that are in place are based in like community safety. Like the rule of if you're a slow skater, skate on the inside, and if you're a fast skater, skate on the outside. There's like this whole like social contract that's in place to make sure the whole skating thing is working, because when you have all these people going different speeds with different capabilities going around this rink over and over again, it could get really dangerous if people aren't breaking that social contract. If slow people are trying to skate on the outside, like they're gonna get run over, people are gonna get hurt. If fast people are trying to do ridiculous tricks on the inside, people are gonna get hurt. And there's like a DJ that's there to make sure that people are like following the rules, and like little referees that are also skating in their little ref jerseys. But it's just so cool, like the synergy that you get when you're skating with other people, because you do have to be so socially aware of other people. It's not like other forms of like hobbies that I have, like I go to the gym, but at the gym, like you can, if you wanted to, like totally lock in, put your headphones on, and you have your own machine that's your space, and you really don't have to pay any mind or attention to like anybody that's around you. You can just do whatever you want. But at the skating rink, you cannot do that. You can put your headphones on, you can listen to your own music. That's what I was doing. Girl, I was listening to Charlie XCX, okay? I didn't want to hear the 90s classics at the time. But I still did have to like pay attention to the community surrounding me, make sure that like I'm helping someone up if they fall in front of me, if they did fall in front of me and I'm going too fast to help, making sure I'm at the very least getting out of the way so they can get help soon, and just like being so socially aware. Okay, so that's how I'm awakening my childlike joy and whimsy. Besides that, honestly, more marker art. Like, I just don't draw enough, I don't color enough, and I think that doing that is like opening something back up in my brain. I don't have enough details on that yet though, because I've only drawn like 2 times since putting this new resolution into place. But if you have suggestions for me, please let me know, because I am trying to return to my pre-oppositional phase of mindset, and I highly think that you should do the same. And also too, the other thing that I wanted to talk about with like bringing back childlike joy and whimsy is that so many of us so severely need to like be doing major work to heal our inner child. Like almost every single person. I'm sure there's not a singular person that has lived through like the society that we have that doesn't have any inner child work to do. And I wanted to talk about it because the therapy that I do that has honestly been like so transformative for me, changed my life, given me back my like willpower and self-worth, has been internal family systems therapy. It's not a very common type of therapy. Like most people that do talk therapy, they're doing like dialectical behavioral therapy, or cognitive behavioral therapy, DBT and CBT. Those are like the 2 most common ones. But internal family systems is also called IFS. It's a type of therapy that is used a lot with like trauma patients like me. And interestingly, not younger people. Like when I started doing this therapy, I started researching it because I'm a nerd, okay? Like I won't go into therapy and just have my therapist talk to me. I'm like, what are you doing? What technique is this? What are we doing? I've always known the type of therapy that I'm doing. And if you don't know, maybe you should ask. But I like looked it up, and apparently IFS is like rarely ever used for children, but I thought it would be, because the way that it works is that you like create characters to represent like parts of your mindset. And when I say create characters, I mean like my therapist literally had me like get out a piece of paper and gave me markers and was like, draw what this part of you looks like. And so you have to get really like creative and use your imagination, literally like closing your eyes and thinking. And you think about like traumatic events of your past, right? That might be like reoccurring for you as someone with like CPTSD/PTSD. Like that's something that happens for me a lot and brings me a lot of psychological trouble. So I would like name these parts of me if I feel like I'm like locking in too much to like avoid something that I'm feeling and then just chronically overworking myself, or if I'm like shutting down and like not going outside, not doing a single thing. Like these are parts of myself, parts that I have literally sat down like with a professional and like drawn on a piece of paper, given names to, given homes to, like doing these whole like imagination based exercises with my mind that felt like really childish. So I was shocked to even find out that that's not something that's really even used for kids in the first place. But I do think it's a very like childlike form of therapy, and one that I did not take seriously at first. Like when I pulled up to therapy, had to pay this psychologist all this money, and he sat there and told me that I needed to draw pictures for an hour. I was low-key pissed. I was like, okay, so you're playing in my face. Like this isn't gonna work. And it, like I said, I had been through years of therapy before that, and it ended up being like some of the most effective therapy that I will actually like willingly use outside of therapy, like without a gun to my head, like just because it actually does make me feel better, I use it. And so I tell people about it all the time. Usually people have never heard about IFS when I talk about it. And when I describe it, they're like, that's weird, kind of childish, right? And then the other day I was scrolling on TikTok and I saw this video that an indigenous like person had posted about how like indigenous practices are used in therapy, like Western therapy. And first of all, like most of Western like mindfulness and all of that shit is based in like indigenous and Eastern practices, right? Like a lot of the things that you know, like your DBT skills, that's literally diet Buddhism. Like if we're just being real, that's where they got a lot of their practices from, as well as like practices indigenous to the Americas. And so I saw this video where this man was talking about how in 2019, Johns Hopkins University did a study, and let me look at what it's called before I butcher it. I'm gonna do my best. I found it. So in 2019, Johns Hopkins University did this study where they used a practice called Wichapi Woyote. It comes from Lakota healers of the Lakota tribe, indigenous to the Americas. And basically what the process and practice was getting people that are like hurt, traumatized. And in the study, they used patients with PTSD, and they had them collect rocks, and then they would take these rocks and they were instructed to like imagine their trauma being inside of the rock, like whatever flashback they keep having reoccur that's really bothering them, like whatever it is, picture that thing being in the rock. And then like say goodbye to your trauma, put the rock in the river, and then watch the rock float away down the river. That was the practice. That's what they did a study on. And in their study, they took PTSD patients, they had them do this like pretty regularly throughout the study, and then reported on like how it affected them. And wouldn't you believe, these PTSD patients reported like overwhelmingly positive feelings related to this process, reported feeling like it really was working for them more so than like other modes of therapy they had tried in the past that like weren't working at all for them. And what's wild to me is just like that if you tell people that, if you tell like super science-based like psychologists about that will swear by CBT and DBT every day and night, that telling people to put their worries into rocks and putting them down a river made them feel better, they would probably be like, wow, so that's bullshit, right? And then even like everyday people that like need help, if they were to like go to a therapist and their therapist was like, put it in a rock and put it down the river, they'd be like, okay, so where's my Prozac? Like this isn't gonna work, right? I would probably feel that way too, because that's how I felt when my therapist like asked me to start drawing and making pictures. But honestly, like so many people, their inner child is so harmed, so starving for care, because the world we live in is not catered to an inner child, girl. It's barely catered to children. Like I said earlier, they are globally the most oppressed class of people. They don't have rights in society. They're not taken seriously. People are allowed to just like walk around all the time and be like, oh, I hate kids. I can't stand kids. Like you probably remember a time when you were a kid that an adult was mean as fuck to you. It's just not a stretch to say that a lot of us have inner child healing to do. So it makes a lot of sense when you think about that like these therapeutic practices that seem childish would end up being some of the most effective ones, because you're actually getting to the root of the issue, which is probably little you. And not only that, but again, like I was saying earlier, so many of these practices are based in like indigenous beliefs. And I'm fully 100,000% of the belief that if you are living in a certain area and you are having problems with anything, with like your mental health, with the land and taking care of it, with just like literally anything, I genuinely feel like nobody's gonna know better how to solve that problem than the people indigenous to the area that you're living in. So it also doesn't shock me that like the Lakota tribe that has been here the whole time would already have the answers to like solving problems like trauma that people are experiencing here on this land. Like it makes genuinely so much sense to me. And I feel like part of the demonization that like indigenous people get and that children will get, they're kind of intertwined because they're all oppressed for the same reasons, right? Like indigenous people, they're oppressed because they were on land that needs to be acquired in order to like fulfill a capitalist ideal, right? Manifest destiny. In the case of the Lakota tribe, they were in the way when some British people were trying to go from sea to shining sea. And with kids, like they're in the same situation of like against their will being put in a place, right, by being born, where they are basically useless to like the capitalist structure. They used to not be, right? Like we used to force kids to go to work all the time and people were having 15 babies so that they could have a bunch of workers. And then that wasn't allowed anymore because we realized child labor is kind of horrible, especially like on an industrial scale. And so now like kids are born just to be like these like quote unquote useless things in the eyes of capitalism until they're old enough to work. So they get oppressed for the same reasons. Like as somebody that is just in the way and not capable of like living the way that other people want them to live. So like, yeah, I don't really even know how to wrap up that thought, but I would love for y'all to chew on that. Maybe give me some feedback so I can chew on it some more because it's been heavy on my mind lately. Okay, I also wanted to tell you guys about this book that I have been listening to. I have been reading a graphic novel. I can't remember the name of it right now. What is it? The Best We Could Do. Yes, I can. The Best We Could Do. That's a graphic novel that I'm reading about a woman whose family immigrated from Vietnam, including her, during the Vietnam War. Super juicy, super good. I'm trying to like get my literacy back up because I have not read much at all since graduating college, besides like 2 sci-fi books. So I'm trying to read that one, but I've been listening to Parable of the Sower on Spotify, and it is such a good book. Let me tell you, it is such a good book. Quick synopsis. I haven't finished it yet. I'm only halfway through it, but spoiler alert also, there is this girl in it that is like a empath. Like she's basically a brujeria, like a witch, and she can feel other people's pain, right? Sad life, especially sad life to live when you are living in a post-apocalyptic world. So the book was written in the 90s by this Black author named Octavia E. Butler. It is a dystopian novel, and in the times that we're living in, like most dystopian shit is not very dystopian anymore. Like I'm also a big fan of 1984, girl surveillance state achieved. Like there's cameras everywhere all the time. I'm talking to one right now. Like I am the person in the walls that they were talking about in 1984. What is also really popular right now, Handmaid's Tale. Like the way that Handmaid's Tale began looks a lot like the way that we're living right now. It's not good, is it? But dystopian media, it's such an interesting time to engage with it right now because the things that we are experiencing seem so very dystopian. And the thing about dystopia is that it's often like set in the future, but what inspires dystopian novels is like the trauma and the experiences that humanity has already had. Like even the writer of Handmaid's Tale, she said like nothing that she wrote into Handmaid's Tale was like her sick and twisted mind, because there's a lot of sick and twisted things in that book and that show, and people were like, woman, what is wrong with you? And she was like, nothing actually, I just wrote this book based on things that have happened to people in third world countries and said that they're happening in the US, so it's scary. Like that is the reality of the dystopian genre, right? So Octavia E. Butler writes this book, Parable of the Sower, and I think there's actually a second one, or maybe it's a trilogy. I don't know. I haven't made it that far yet. But in this book, this girl is living in near or in Los Angeles, California in the year 2026. So it's a really interesting time to be reading it, because basically what happened is that like the United States fell into war, and then like the war I think was a little bit nuclear, or there was at least a lot of bombs, and it really destroyed like the infrastructure of the nation, fractured the nation into like an east and west side. And she ended up on the west side, obviously in California. And then also another thing that happened is that they started using like almost kind of a combination of bio and psychological warfare by supplying drugs throughout the country towards the opposition. And it was a drug that they made called like pyro, that literally will take over people's minds and give them pyromania, to where they're just obsessed with nonstop starting fires everywhere. So it kind of like tears apart the community from the inside out, because these pyromaniacs are given pyro, and then when they're high on the pyro, they burn down their entire neighborhood. So they do the work of like their oppressors for them by destroying the neighborhood from the inside out. So she has to defend herself from pyros. Also in this world, like police, so not to be trusted. Like they basically work for anybody that's wealthy, and most people aren't wealthy at this point because we're in an apocalypse or post-apocalypse. War, really. I keep calling it an apocalypse, but like it's just a world after war. So the police can't be really trusted. They're not really here to look out for you unless you have money to give them. And then on top of that, there's just extreme poverty. So you just have to defend yourself from other people because they're starving, they're hungry, they have nothing. And so interestingly, the way that they keep themselves safe in this world is like by building walls. And if you don't have a wall, like good luck, sister, because you're just too exposed to the world around you. And there's already some very like interesting parallels, especially from the time period that this was written, that I can imagine probably inspired Octavia. Like the fact that the pyro drug itself, like we know for a fact now that all these files have been released, redacted and whatnot in the decades following the 1980s. We know that COINTELPRO existed. We know that the CIA and the FBI were actively like working to supply neighborhoods full of like marginalized people, like Black people and really poor people, with drugs, like giving them drugs, giving them a lot of different drugs, not just crack, but also giving like homeless people acid to like test the effects that it had on people, supplying low-income neighborhoods with crack when obviously they didn't have money to get crack in the first place, but giving it to them so that they could do something kind of like the pyros in the book Parable of the Sower, where they develop addictions, they sell the drugs to fund their addictions, making other people have the addictions. And then now that this community is crippled by addiction, it's torn apart by the inside out. And now white supremacists and the government don't have as much work to do to hold Black people back when they're quote unquote holding themselves back by like these addiction problems that they have. So that was like a really obvious parallel to me. But then also what was like really interesting was like the walls, because now we have like Donald Trump and his whole build a wall rhetoric and all of that stuff in our year 2016 and forward. But again, this was written in the 90s. So it's really interesting to think about that too, how like some people might cling to the wall because they're like just incredibly fearful, but like what are they fearing? Poverty, fearing the same poverty that they're very close to experiencing themselves because the situation around us is so dire. Like, it's really good stuff. And so I just wrote like a couple quotes that stuck out to me from my last read that I wanted to share. First of all, she talks about this sewing machine, and it is so impossible for me to like actually like fully listen to this book. I wish I had this book physical. While it would take me way longer to finish, it's still taking a long time to finish anyways, because about every like 5 minutes, I have to pause this book and transcribe what is being written to save, because it's just so good. Her house had got robbed, right? The house that she lived in, and she's a child throughout the book. She starts at like 16, gets older slowly, but when she's about 17, she has her house get broken into by robbers, and they take a lot of stuff. And one of the things that they take from her home, where she lives with like her mom and her brothers, is her sewing machine. And she's so upset about this sewing machine being taken because that's how they mend their clothes. Like I said, like there's no like regular industry and supply chain. People don't just go like down the street to buy clothes from like Target or something. Like, sister, the world ended. So people mend their clothing, and she used the sewing machine to mend it, to make it easier than like sewing it by hand. And so she's talking about the sewing machine being stolen. She says, "It might not look like what we're used to, life is what she's talking about. It might not look like what we're used to. It might look bad, hard, but that's not a fatal flaw. And then later on, she says, we'll adapt. We have to. And I just like clung to this so much because it's obviously, guys. Like, I feel like that crazy like English teacher that would like force everyone to describe like what the green curtains mean when like maybe the green curtains are just green. But like, no, I swear, this sewing machine is being used as like a metaphor for like the systems that we grow comfortable with for how they take care of us. Like the system of capitalism. Like, I'm sitting here in like a nice studio. I got comfy clothes. I got a cool little iPhone. Thanks to capitalism. It does a lot of good things for me. But does that mean that it's the system I need to be using, right? Like, she was really happy to have this sewing machine because the sewing machine gave her the bare minimum of like being able to keep clothes on her back and maybe even having other people pay her to help them keep clothes on her back. Like, it had a little bit of opportunity. But at the end of the day, like, if all that happens, that needs to happen for you to be like totally unsafe is for that sewing machine to be gone, it wasn't the best system to begin with. And so like what she's saying in this quote is that like things are going to be different, they're going to be bad, they're going to be hard, but like she will be able to persevere. And so I love that so much because like I feel like we're forced to like work with a system that a lot of us really don't appreciate, that a lot of us understand is a really broken and harmful one, but we're still capable of persevering through it. Like she said, bad, hard, but not impossible, not a fatal flaw. Another quote that she had written that I really liked was that she had her like whole neighborhood get set on fire by pyros, like the whole neighborhood, right? And they came through, they had guns, they were like shooting people, choking them, strangling them. It was tragic. And so she's trying to figure out what to do with her life after this. And she was like going through her options and she thought about the police. And then she said, if the police have ignored what's been done to my neighborhood so far, if such a fire and so many corpses can be ignored, why should I go to them? What would they do? It's best to stay clear of them. And again, with like the book being a metaphor for a lot of things that we experience throughout life, especially the Black community, because remember, this author is a Black woman that wrote this in the 1990s. Like, by the 1990s, the Black community already knew, like, police were not here to help us, sister. And it's still a fight that we're fighting, like, with the Black Lives Matter movement igniting, like, in 2016/2020 and, like, reigniting now forward. Like, and now other people seeing, like, Renee Good and, what was that guy's name, Ben? Not Preddy, the other one. The one that was killed on New Year's. There's so many names. It's so sad. They're, like, they're clogging my brain, but I need to remember them. Oh, Keith Porter. Yeah. So like people see Keith Porter lose his life to ICE. Some people are beginning to feel unsafe, but nobody felt unsafe like when they saw Alex Preddy and Renee Good, like two white people that are traditionally not at all the faces of victims of police brutality, also be victimized by police brutality. And that really invigorated people to like show up to the damn award shows, celebrities that wouldn't have otherwise said anything, wearing like pins that say like "be good," saying things against ICE when maybe they wouldn't have otherwise, because like people that traditionally have been safe from police for a really long time, like white women, they're not even included in the scope of safety anymore. And so like now everybody's slowly starting to pick up on the fact that like if police are willing to ignore your neighborhood being on fire, why would you actually call them? Why would you actually rely on them for help? That's a way that Black people have felt for a really long time, because it's like, if you call the police and the police end up being the ones killing you, what system of safety do you have? So like what Black people have had to do is try and find their own systems of safety. And a lot of times it doesn't really work out in the best way. Like there's a lot of other gun violence that takes place instead because people don't have this like structured system of safety to rely on. So I just thought it was really interesting because it's like, there's so much in that book that is about police brutality, honestly, when like the police, especially because the police are like blatantly a force that only serves the wealthy in that book. And that's also the case in real life. People just can't realize it as easily because we're not in this post-apocalyptic world. But if that's something you care about a lot, like I do, please start reading it with me so that we can talk about it, because it is so, so good. And that actually brings me to another thing that I wanted to talk about, the fact that in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, people are starting to engage in community policing in their neighborhood, right? And like, I saw these comments on this video where people had set up like an ICE checkpoint in their neighborhood where they just had like lawn chairs out in the intersection of the street and cones. And like when people wanted to pass through the intersection, they were coming up to the car, they were looking at who was in it, making sure it wasn't ICE, and then letting them pass through the neighborhood. And I was like, hell yeah, I love it. Pro community policing over here. And then people in the comments were like, oh, so they hate the police, so they went ahead and just made another police force? Like, what is that? What is that? And they were critiquing it, but the thing about it is that community policing is not at all the same thing as like ICE showing up in your neighborhood. First of all, the majority of ICE agents that are working in Minnesota actively are not from Minnesota, like at all, like the state. They're from other states. They're coming from like states like mine, like Texas and other states, primarily in the South, because there's more poor people in the South that are willing to throw all their morals away to work for an organization like ICE. But anyways, they're not even community members, right, that are policing other people. They don't even live there. So that's one of the main differences between them, is that these Minnesotans that are doing this voluntarily, they actually live in the community, so they can stand to benefit from the community being safer, and they could stand to lose if the community was unsafe. Those ICE agents, they're going home to a hotel, and then after they're done doing their work there, they're leaving that hotel, going back to wherever they live. So whatever havoc they wreak in that neighborhood, whatever destruction they do to the neighborhood, it has nothing to do with them. That's not their community. So that's already one reason community policing is different. Second one, it's voluntary. How many ICE agents do you think would be out there doing what they're doing if they weren't getting paid at all? Unfortunately, I do think that there's like a handful of sickos that would do it for the love of the game and white supremacy, but I'm sure a lot of them give a damn about that $42,000 bonus that they're getting on top of their extra income from being an ICE agent, right? So they're not motivated by anything other than like the kindness of their heart and caring about their community members, those community policing people in Minnesota. Meanwhile, ICE agents are motivated by like a $42,000 bonus. And those are already like some very basic differences when you don't even like consider the fact that ICE agents work for a state with a long history of white supremacy, and the people on the other end are just people that aren't a part of any state organization that has said long documented history of white supremacy. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on that real quick because I really do like community policing, and I am an abolitionist, and whenever I discuss it, like people will come at me and be like, well, the solutions that you have for abolishing the police sound kind of like the police, but they're not though. They're not. Community policing is not the same as the police. Although policing is in the word, the fact that it is community based and it is based on like the consent of the people, like actually, not that you were born and like forced to live under these laws, like with our law enforcement system, but you actually willfully were like, this is a good idea, I want to support this, and you did it voluntarily. That's what makes community policing, to me at least, something that I think is like effective and that communities should absolutely be engaging in. My last note, I want to have something that I call the BLOC OPP at the end of every episode, where I just like spew hatred towards at least one person. There's always somebody that deserves it. And the BLOC OPP for today is actually one person and one organization. The organization is Turning Point USA, because what was that? I wanted to talk about Bad Bunny, but like I spent too much time talking about other things, and that's okay. I'll talk about it another time. But like I love Bad Bunny's Super Bowl halftime show. And how dare you, Turning Point USA, try to have a quote unquote all-American halftime show when Bad Bunny is literally Americano. He is literally a US citizen by birth because he was born in a US territory. Like he is a US citizen by force. So first of all, he was already all-American. He said, God bless America. Fuck you for that. Second of all, Kid Rock being the one to lead this Christian value white nationalist event, the same Kid Rock that in the 2001 legendary film Osmosis Jones said, I like them under 18, some say it's statutory, I say that's mandatory. That Kid Rock, that is who you have representing you and your values. That is ridiculous. BLOC OPP. You are saying in broad daylight on live television. How many people even watch that? What, like 10 million people? Said to 10 million people that you think that someone that loves statutory rape is more all-American than someone that is literally a US American citizen and doesn't like statutory rape. That tells us everything that we need to know. So that's the BLOC OPP. That's all I have time for today. So thank you for listening to the BLOC Cast. I hope to have another episode soon. Fingers crossed. It was a lot of fun. And honestly, I thought it would be difficult to yap for this long, but I would like to yap for twice as long in the future. So, Thanks for watching. Bye.
Hey guys, it's us, Angel and Cosmo from the couch on my ThinkPad webcam. I just wanted to add an extra little into this video to say thank you so much for joining me on this first episode, genuinely, truly. It was so much fun learning how to even create this, and I'm actively still in the process of learning. So if you want to be around for the journey of me figuring out how to even like make a better intro, how to create a subbing stack. That's actually something I'm working on today, creating a Substack, because part of the reason that this episode is so short, I would ideally in the future like to make episodes that are around an hour, hour and a half, is because I filmed it at a free studio provided by an organization that I work with called Dawa Diversity Awesomeness Aware. It's actually awareness, diversity, awareness, and wellness in action. And Dawa has a free studio that provides hour-long sessions. So given that hour, the time to like set up and get ready and clean up, that's as much time as I had to film the episode this week. But they do have 2 hour slots available for paid members, and that paid membership is around $130 per month. It's quite a bit, but I'm going to be starting a Substack in an effort to crowdfund, because if even just 10 of you liked the episode enough to toss me $10, we could so be in a longer studio session for the next time that I film. So if you would like to support me that way, support longer episodes, it would be so deeply appreciated. I am just a care worker getting paid by the state at the end of the day, okay? So like many people, that 130 is not something I can necessarily afford, but maybe with the power of community, we can make it happen. So yes, I am begging, pleading on my knees perchance, because it would just be so fun, wouldn't it? Okay, but nonetheless, I'm planning on having free content as well on my Substack, so check that out. I'll put the link in the video. Also, be sure to check out my Instagram and my TikTok accounts, as those are monetized by you watching ads. So if you don't have anything to give but would like to give Big Brother a little money so he can in return give me a crumb, that would help me out greatly too. I really love you guys so much, and not in a parasocial way, but in the way of supporting me. It's something I deeply appreciate. And I hope you have a great day. Bye.